Honestly, I don't like the term ADHD because it doesn't even like cover the bases. It is so off base. Like I don't have a lack of attention. I have abundance of attention and I just can't control it sometimes. And it's not a disorder because there's so many things that I can do in the right environment that other people can't. I could be successful with. So I see it as just a difference. And that difference is beautiful.
Hi, Ron. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be, asked to speak anywhere, you know. So thank you.
No, you're more than welcome. Really looking forward to this chat. So we're going to dive straight in, Ron, with the first question, which is always, Ron, what's important to you?
Yeah, the most important thing to me is mental health. It's something that's, hasn't always been important to me. It's been something that is is like I've noticed that I've become very passionate about it because when it's overlooked, that's when I notice like there's this, I don't know if it's anger or disdain, but it's like, I notice when it's not being looked at and when it's important, and especially when I see other people that are stressed, that I worked with, and it can be heartbreaking at the same time, and as well as infuriating because
Mm.
we all have our own like issues, especially at the workplace, because we start when we come through the door, they're always telling us like, leave your problems at the door. When you come in, and that's not that easy or even possible. You and to just like dismiss that is to, especially when you're trying to solve problems within the workplace, with safety, like that is such a huge misstep to overlook that. So mental health is definitely something that is very important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and it's I'm just thinking about that thing about the workplace as well, you were saying as well. So one in the sense of the overall for yourself and that mental health, and we'll get into that a bit more in a minute, but it's such a shame that even still now you think that in the workplace that it is still that sort of approach of almost you have to remove part of yourself for when you come into work,
Yeah.
almost ignore who you are in some ways, leave a bunch of emotions at the door effectively. We only want you to be a certain way once you're in the confines of this building or in whether it's remote working, whatever. But as soon as you're in work, quote unquote,
Yeah.
you have to be a different person, which just in any stretch isn't really that healthy.
Oh yeah, and when you're starting to be, when you've got a mask and you got to put all
Yeah.
this energy into this person that you're not, all like that's energy that's not being spent in a good way. So you're automatically not going to be able to show up as productive as you can, and it's huge when you come in to work, and it's incredible because like I actually am the leader of a mental health committee at my job, and I actually held one yesterday, and it was like kind of more free form and talking about what people were struggling with, and I thought it was really deep because it's like, you know a couple of people were talking about how they struggled at work and vented, and it was it could be perceived negative, but it's also like
Mm.
they don't have the space to do that, and if you're not talking about what's the issue, then you can never get to a real solution, when it comes to like Because if you aren't in a place of well-being, that is like, you can't get there without a good mental health space and without feeling like you're
Mm.
supported and being able to talk about these issues. Like, if the only thing that's acceptable is if somebody died in your family or your dog died, or like for you to be off your game. If it's
Mm.
anything else minor, it's like, just suck it up and move
Mm.
on, which it's doesn't work that way for a lot of individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important in the sense that one incentive that you have, that mental health is important to you, but the fact that you're actively doing something about it and being part of and head of that committee that you have in your workplace. But you're right in the sense that sometimes, and I've spoken to this about a few people, if the experience that someone's going through isn't, like you said, either a bereavement, a death, or something that's considered, you know,
Yeah.
out there traumatic, it's almost like, well, everything else should just be perfectly fine. It's almost like, if it's not really obvious, then as you say, suck it up. What's the problem? But the point that other one I want to make there, to echo that you said, is what that forces people to do is, you say, put on that mask and to pretend
Yeah.
to be something else. There's like putting on the show for everyone else. And you're right, the amount of, not just time, but the amount of energy that it takes a
Yeah.
person to maintain that mask for the hours they're in work, it's just exhausting.
Yeah. No, and definitely, like, you think about the added, and they're trying to do their job, so it's like the
Yes.
the added pressure of that, and then they're trying to keep up with everyone else, and then on top of it, um they don't have really much downtime, so they get burnt out that much quicker. And you wonder why, like, somebody comes in and they're like, well, he used to be so friendly, and then something changed in him. It's because, like, it's just so wearing on the individual, that feels like they can't speak up. And that's why I'm a huge advocate, and became a strengths coach, because you need to be able to self advocate. um and a lot of people don't know how to speak up about their emotions, especially like what's going on, or how they felt when somebody talked to them, and either yelled at them or talked down to them, in a way that they should have known better. We're not children, and you know but a lot of times it gets to the point where you just can't, you're bottling it up inside. And I know from my personal experience that I want to quit. And
Mm.
but I've been able to have those conversations with individuals, bosses at my work, who did those things, and said, I didn't really appreciate the way that you talked to me in that situation. um I know that you probably didn't do that on purpose, but moving forward, if you could help me get better, because like that's going to affect my productivity. And I know that you want the best out of every one of us. So in order to get that, um, I would like for you to work on those situations, on how you speak to me and other people like that.
Yeah, 100%. It is. It's having, you say, it's having those challenging and difficult conversations sometimes, and having
Yeah.
as you say, I love the way you put it there, the advocacy for yourself, in a sense
Yeah.
of, and not necessarily having a shouting, not just, ranting at someone, actually having that construction of feedback to say, as you say, with the aim of making things better, to move
Yeah.
forward, because it also is, sometimes I think it can be short sighted from a workplace, or a boss or an employer, to ignore people's mental health, because if you take that step back and enable people to manage it, they will become better employees in a sense of, because they will be more comfortable, so they will be more productive. It just, it
Yeah.
feels sometimes maybe that they, oh, we're going to have to take some time to do this, but if you do it and do it well, the people that work for you will be so much better.
Yeah. And it's all about collaboration, because
Yes.
and understanding, because although I don't agree with what she said or he said, like, I understand, like, they're new to this role, maybe they don't know how to talk to people. Talking is an art form. Not a lot of people
Mm,
really do know how to communicate on, especially an emotional level at a workplace in that position, because they're not given a lot of um guidance in that area. And there's also a lot of stress on them that they don't get to talk about. So it's
mm,
about having empathy for their position, and coming from a place of curiosity, and also like if you notice in there, I know, I don't put the blame on them. Like,
mm,
I don't think that anybody really does that on purpose. They're just reacting emotionally in that situation. So you have two people that don't understand what's going on emotionally with each other because they're not allowed to talk about it. So there's this this extra layer of miscommunication, just because of that work environment of, like, well, we shouldn't be talking about emotions. Emotions are bad. Strong emotions, whatever emotions, like. But a happy employee is a productive employee, as well as somebody that's going to stick with the company.
100%. Absolutely. You mentioned there, we first started saying, you obviously mental health is such an important thing to you, but you said it initially maybe it maybe didn't have as much importance previously. Was there something that sort of made it become more important in your life for yourself?
Yeah, it was the discovery that I have ADHD. Um,
Okay.
I was, like, about to lose my job, and because I was going really fast, and I wanted to keep up, and I wanted to impress and people please and all those things, and I didn't see it as that at the time, but, like, it was it was such an urge that I was actually damaging, company property, and injuring myself in the process. So I'd gotten, like, a bunch of safety write ups, and fortunately, I had somebody in my life to run that by, and they kept telling me, like, you need to slow down, and finally that message sunk in, and I was like, because of the fear of losing my job, so I was like, I went to my practical, I mean, my my doctor,
Mm,
and my primary care doctor, and yeah, I was like, basically had to lead her by the hand to be like, maybe I have ADHD. I can't, because
mm,
I was like, I can't slow down. I don't know what to do. I need help. Like, I was a plead,
mm.
for help at that time, and I finally was able to get connected with my now therapist, um, which was a journey in and of itself. And, like, it didn't really start out with that passion there, but it started growing because, like, I wanted to understand
Mm,
what ADHD really was, and, like, on a deeper level. And I didn't get a lot of information from my therapist other than, what I can do to get better with it. But, like, what it actually was, and how to understand it better, didn't come till much later. When I was about to lose my job again, because I thought I got better with it, and I wasn't seeing that therapist at the time, and I was in a different role, which I was driving, like, a forklift, and wrecking thing, company power, and I was actually trying to slow down. So it got to the point where I was
okay.
about to get fired again, and I was just like, so worn out, so exhausted, so burnt out from the stress of, like, trying to keep up in that role, that I was like, the only option that I knew that would have worked was stepping down from that role, because I
Mm,
knew that with the distraction, because I was trying to slow down. And I went back to my therapist, and I thought I was making progress, but I finally, I ended up like the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, yeah, I don't trust my brain in this position for me to not get fired. So I had to step down and go back to the role that I was in, which at the time was very humbling. But now I see it as like the best decision I've ever made, because it opened up the door for that continued deeper explanation to develop my podcast that I have today, and to pursue coaching individuals, and developing that, um, you know with ADHD, depression, or addiction, to become more pro-social, so that they can um, break through isolation to become better versions of themselves that can connect in deeper relationships, reclaim their confidence, and finally be seen and supported in the way that they truly always needed to, but never knew how to ask for.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ron. It's really it's really powerful to hear you talk about it in that way, because I don't know, in a sense of how much it's in the general sort of press or media or in the States, but ADHD is definitely something that's getting more publicity, and much more in just the news, or just in general in Ireland at the moment. It's definitely more
Awesome.
adults being
Yeah.
diagnosed with ADHD, because either they were ignored as children, or it just wasn't something there. They were maybe just considered as quote unquote badly behaved, naughty, whatever the word may be. But as you say, like for yourself though, what's affecting a lot of adults now is, you say that they're struggling to hold down employment. They're bouncing from one employer to another. They're not in employment at all. Or relationships, all these things, and there's also, I think, with that, then this labeling of people when they were growing up or whatever, going through adolescence, or kids and stuff. So they have a lot of this. I was just a naughty child, or I was just a bold child, or whatever that was, and there's a lot of baggage, I think, that goes with a lot of people, a lot of
Mhm.
shame that comes with that. And almost, was there a sort of almost, I'll go back to a question now, was there almost a frustration in yourself that you're like, how can I not figure this out? Like, before you got diagnosed, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
how did you, was it frustrating at times?
Oh yeah. I mean, like I I didn't think there was anything wrong with me.
Yes.
I consider myself like very intelligent, but I also have this like very low self esteem. Um, when it comes to like, it's just very misplaced. So when I
Mm,
was able to, and thank you for that question, and that introspection, um, I was able to look deeper into that, because like the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because just like a superficial,
yeah.
understanding of ADHD. And I feel like it's still the same. Like,
Mm,
yeah, there's more awareness of it, but it's more like, okay, well, what pills can we prescribe you?
yeah.
And, you know, like, or people will minimize it, like saying, oh, well, everyone gets distracted. And that's true, but it's not as intense. It's like most people don't forget that they have a doctor's appointment. Most people don't forget that they left their keys in, or even leave their keys in the refrigerator. Like, or a task that they've been doing 1,000 times, and then they forget how to do that task, or just misplace something. These are things that are like, this is another level, and it
Mm,
has to do with childhood, and going back, because like when I was going to therapy, it was like, there was things brought up about what happened in my childhood, and I was like, how is that even relevant today? You know, how is like that happened so long ago? But honestly,
Mm.
like with the work that I've been doing on myself, it's like that has so much relevance in who I
Mm.
became because that trauma formed, you know, and it's held in your body. It's not just a memory. Some memories that are so traumatic, you don't even have a memory of it. Like there's a memory
Mm.
that I don't have that I was told of when I was young, and I stood up on the desk, and like it was in first or second grade, and I was trying to make friends, and I stood up on the desk to be funny, and my teacher didn't like that and decided to put me in the front of the class, and I ended up getting made fun of. And that teacher actually didn't tell my mom. I told my mom, according to my mom. So that memory was so traumatic that I had, you know, my brain, in order to protect me from that pain, it erased that memory, or it buried it so deep that I can't recall
Mm.
it still. You know, so it's like your brain's there to protect you from these situations, and that's how those masks start to develop at an early
Yeah.
age. And people feel like, oh well, I can't talk about this at work. I can't expose myself
Mm.
because this and this happened, you know, and yeah, they're becoming more open and aware about it, but like at the same time, it's like, oh, he's got a little ADHD. It's kind of like
Yeah.
it's being seen as an excuse rather than like,
Yes.
let's look at this deeper and see how these
Mm.
guys, you know, how there that you actually, most people, and what I'm learning is, have a neuro, like when they're younger, especially in the womb, and their parents are under stress, because I feel like everybody who's neurodivergent, and this is just my theory,
Mm.
is a highly sensitive human being, because I'm very sensitive. And I feel like
Mm.
within that, you know, from the research that I'm doing, is like that within the womb, because the parents were under stress, that parts of their brains didn't develop to like a normal person, or normal, how it develops normally, but other parts of the brain actually develop more. So it's like when
Mm.
you're talking about ADHD, people are more, that have ADHD are more creative. They're able to think outside the box. They have a lot more perseverance. But I feel like that's more about because they had to persevere, because in order to fit in,
Mm.
and just to live in this world that's not, that the
Mm.
system is, you know, honestly, it's, I feel like it's been broken, or it needs to be seriously updated, um you know,
Mm.
to fit what the culture is today, you know,
I
and
agree.
yeah, that's what I feel about
Yeah.
today's climate with their understanding of neurodivergency, period.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's it. I'm going so much into that, and I do again. Thank you for sharing, as well, especially that the memory that you shared there. And as I say, like it was funny when you first emailed me a couple of maybe about a month or so ago, because at the time, like someone else who I've just spoken to, the episode hasn't come out yet. They work in the space of neurodivergence as well, and as I say, it's just been a lot of TV programs and stuff that's come up. So it's kind of that thing to me. It's just coming up even more at the moment for me. That sort of familiarity, the fact
Yeah.
that I'm getting so many people wanting to talk about it, which I think is incredible. But there's also this thing of, I share a bit about myself now, because I think just a little bit add a bit of relevance. Um, I've never been officially diagnosed with anything in any sort of neurodivergence, but the
Mhm.
more I've been sort of reading about it and talking to people about it, I think there's an element of that, not quite fully, but I probably have some form of dyslexia in some way, or some just a milder
Yeah.
versions of it, because it's like that. I notice these things like where I'm very happy to talk to people, and I'll chat. I'll do the podcast, and I'll chat to anyone. I can hold a conversation. I can remember a lot of things. I can talk about stuff. If you ask
Yeah.
me to write it, you ask me to write something, I'll turn a blank. Like, and I it's almost like there's a blocker between my brain and my fingers to type it. I'll end up typing the same words. I'll end up repeating the sentences, almost like
Mm.
it'll be the same thing. I can't think of something different when it comes to writing. Wish I could think of it if I was talking. And I had, there's similar things when I think about to school and stuff and sort of circumstances, or the whole thing of made in front of the class, maybe a little bit older than you were, where
Mm.
graded papers and stuff would been told in front of the entire class again, and mine was one of the lower ones in an English class, and you're made to feel this small and stuff,
Yeah.
so you kind of get that hang up on
Yeah.
it, and it's you and I managed obviously to get through everything and get to where I am now, but it's funny though, the more you think, I don't necessarily need a full diagnosis, but I more think, oh, that makes more sense now. So I can manage that. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like once you kind of know, the knowledge is
Mhm.
power piece, isn't it? So when
Yeah.
you I want to come back into yourself, is when you kind of got that, diagnosis, your ADHD, what was that initial sort of response from yourself?
Yeah, it was a bit of relief, but then after it was
Yeah.
like I'm like I can't this can't be possible. Like I'm not broke, it was I felt like I was broken. Like there
Yes.
was I'm one of those.
Mm.
And I'm not as bad, but there was some denial, and then there was days cuz it's like it's more about the chemical imbalance. Because some days
Mm.
I'm really like super on, and like I can conquer the world, and I have all these
Mm.
ideas, and I want to do things. And then when those days happened back then, I was like, do I even like is that like I don't think
Yeah.
I have ADHD. Like, but then because I can remember stuff today, like
Yeah.
or whatever. But then there's those days where like I'd get depressed, but I didn't see it as depression because like I was in such denial of those emotions, because it's about those emotions are bad, and like you shouldn't be feeling
Mm.
them or talking about them. So like it wasn't like I didn't want to feel them, or I didn't think that there were it was worth exploring. It's just I didn't know how, and society had trained me in this way. So I'm still working on allowing those
Mm.
emotions, because I've realized just how depressed I really am, and now it's like to the point where I'm like, there's a difference between grief and depression, and they're very,
Mm.
very like they have so many things that like you can confuse them for. So I've realized now that, maybe it's not as much depression, but more of a sadness that's carried in my body for so long. So I've been allowing myself to be sad, and it's this last release has been like 3 days of like this sadness, which was mixed with anger and frustration, and like I was very raw in that, and I wanted to be able to cry, because like I'm reading this book. It's called Feel, Heal, and Let That Shit Go by Rachel Kaplan. And it's been an incredible journey, because I've started with anger and now it's sadness, which is something I'm not normally. Most men are like, if you
Mm.
say they're sad, you're like, it's like that's not a thing for guys. Like, it's like
Yeah.
that shouldn't be coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
But it's how I'm feeling, and these feelings actually tell us things about our environment, or things about how people are communicating with us, or maybe a boundary's been crossed, and or it's a deep feeling that's resonating inside your body that you've been holding on to for years, and it's
Mm.
so heavy, that it's like when it's finally released, there's such a mixture of different
Mm.
emotions that are coming up, because they're finally able to, that sadness had been blocking it down, and I've got
Yeah.
years decades of sadness to get through, but it's so relieving, because it's like
Yeah.
when I get to the other side, I'm I feel lighter, And I feel like
Yeah.
anytime that sadness comes up, like, okay, we can go through this. I'm able to go deeper into like what where and memories come up, and about what happened and why, where it's coming from. So you get deeper to the root cause of like who you really are, how you became who you are, and really how you can move forward with that information.
Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, and it's interesting what you said there about, having the diagnosis of ADHD, and in the some way again managing obviously the various emotions and thoughts that came up, and one side of it is relief, and then the other side of it is that where you said, "Oh, I'm now almost one of them." The fact that it's almost like, again, "Oh, there's something wrong with me. There's something broken," and how that initially sat with you, and I can get it, like, because it's, as you say, there were so many times you think, "Well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just who I
Yeah.
am," type thing. So now that if you're obviously you're still working through stuff and you're still working with it, how do you right now? How do you see that sort of your relationship or perception of ADHD now within yourself?
Yeah, I just see it as, there's been a lot of acceptance.
Yeah.
And acceptance is like, this is how it is. I don't have to like what's going on. I don't have to agree with what's going on, but I just have to accept, and not try to
Mm.
fight, and try to
Mm.
control or change what I can't change. My brain, I just see it as a brain difference.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't like the term ADHD because it doesn't even like cover the bases. It is so off base. Like, like I don't have a lack of attention. I have a abundance of attention, and I just can't control it sometimes. And it's not a disorder because there's so many things that I can do in the right environment that other people can't. That I can be successful with. So I see it as just a difference.
Yeah.
And that difference is beautiful. Our diversity as a human race is our strength because we
Mm.
can solve problems, complex problems, like or understanding something deeper like ADHD. I feel like the science is missing a lot of the right parts in order to have a full investigation. Like somebody or some buddies with ADHD,
Mm.
being involved, like asking them questions, having them being part of the experiments, not just running a test and running blood tests or running a brain scan. That's all good and well, but you can't, like, it's like taking a chimpanzee out of its natural environment and putting it in a lab and saying this is what they naturally do. Like
Yeah.
that is so off, like you don't no you don't get that, you don't get the right
Yeah.
information. And honestly, like, I do want to get involved in deeper research and of
Yeah.
that, but that's further along down the road. So it's like having these dreams and having these goals, like, has been super, amazing. But I also needed people in my life to help me
Mm.
and to start to value that, and be open and on a authentic with who I am, regardless of, because it came from, that place of shame and guilt, came from a
Mm.
place of what are people going to think about me? How am I going to fit in? How am I going to be loved if they know that I have ADHD? And honestly, I've got to work on my self-love because yeah, I do value those connections, but I can't value them more than I value how I love and interact with myself, because I can't change who I am, and I can't continue to try to chase being somebody to get that acceptance from somebody else. It takes like a deeper level of self acceptance, which takes, it takes especially for neurodivergent years, because it's been years, I'm
Yeah.
still working on it.
Hi, James here. If you've been watching and thinking, I would like to make a change, but not sure where to start, that's where I can help. My 12-week coaching program will enable you to reconnect with what matters most and move forward with clarity and confidence. If that sounds like you, head over to jamesdeancoach.com. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think it is a huge thing to first bring up that self-awareness and then be willing to keep diving into it and to keep challenging it, questioning it, thinking about it, feeling it, as you mentioned, you know what I mean? And then the level you say there's an acceptance to certain things. But I really do and I really do appreciate the fact that you mentioned that whole thing of self-love, because,
Mhm.
and especially as you said, there's two guys chatting here, two men, the sort of awful, the sense of the fact that the stereotype is still there, the sense of men don't talk about emotions and don't definitely
Yeah,
talk about self-love, because there's this, and
I
I'm
definitely don't
interested in the
cry.
sort of the, yeah, absolutely, because I'm interested in the cultural sort of differences, and I'm sure there's going to be similarities, but in sense of the whole term of self-love,
Yeah.
um, in some ways, for growing up, for me, would have been, that's arrogant. That's being cocky. That's being,
Mm.
you love yourself. It's kind of a bit of a, you're just a show off. You're just a big headed or whatever. You know what I mean? All these phrases
Yeah.
versus what what it means about self love is self acceptance, who you are, being proud, being whatever the sort of adjective you want to use. Was that, as you know, because I'd love to get your perspective on self love now.
Yeah, and it took me a while to get to that point.
Mm.
Because and it came through that acceptance, because like when I was at my, in that other role and in the thick of it, I was like, well, I need to get all this stuff done, and anybody that got in the way would have been,
Mm.
of me getting that job done or holding me up, I would be like, they're just an obstacle. They're not a person. Um, so I get
Mm.
very angry with that. And, it took some, like little things like I'm I love myself enough not to get angry at that person because I can't control what they're doing. You know, um, I'm not loving them. I'm loving me by not getting angry. And like once I started practicing that, it was like, yeah, it was a rough go, but it was like it started to really sink in, like, yeah, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself enough to,
Mm.
like, I'm not going to put myself through that situation because I love myself, because it's it's like it's not worth the energy wasted
Yeah.
on something that I can't change. And you know, those situations started to develop, and I started reading this book by James Baldwin, and I can't remember the exact quote, but he was like, it really resonated with me about, like, we're all part of the humankind. And I don't know the exact way that he said it, but I started seeing
Mm.
people as like, that's somebody's mother, that's somebody's son,
Mm.
that's somebody,
Mm.
instead of like, if I'm walking somewhere, they're just a thing in my way. And I started seeing the ugliness of how I was treating other people, and at first it was like, it was eye opening, and then it started to really resonate and, like, grow over time. Like, this is a person. We're all people, that want happiness and want to be free from pain at the core of
Mm.
whoever we are. What that looks like for everybody else may not necessarily be translated by you into like that, but like, I chase things before I understood, had deeper values. Like, I chased clothes, I chased women, I chased, whatever I thought would make the outside look better. whether
Mm.
that was a car or a house or like, but those things, getting those things, they never lasted in that aspect of me like really being happy. It only just made me want to chase more things. But
Mm.
now that I realize like I have enough right here,
Mm.
like I have all that I need. And all I need to do is cultivate it, like patience or curiosity or love or love of learning. Those
Mm.
things like I can develop, or my kindness towards other people.
Mm.
That one right there has been like something that I didn't know what it looked like until I started working on it and developing it and showing it to other people. And kindness can just look like just listening to somebody while they vent without, trying to offer to fix it, or maybe
Mm.
offering a suggestion of like, here's what I did. Um, but not expecting them to take it. It's kindness is giving something to somebody just for the sake of giving it without expecting anything in return. In the world, I feel is in desperate need of more kindness from more people. Um,
Mm.
so hope that
Yeah.
answered your
No,
question.
no, thank you. No, yeah, and absolutely. No, no, it was, thank you again like, for sharing it, because there's so much of what you're saying is absolutely resonating with me, because when you talked about there, that initial sort of, or that previous way of seeing success, the success is the
Yeah.
stuff, is the things, there's the more of this, it's
Mm-hmm.
the materialistic, and again, it's not to to dismiss it entirely. There's still things that we may want or need, but as you
Yeah.
point, the point you said though is like, it'll never be enough if that's all you're chasing. If that's what you're
Yeah.
seeking, if you're trying to find fulfillment in getting more stuff, then you'll always be trying to just get more, because that's the only thing that you'll ever be, that's going to give you that sort of
Yeah.
hit. Whereas you say that you can, you know, have stuff if you want, but if you don't need it, if you're enough, you're enough. It's such a powerful thing
Yeah.
to come to that and work on that and still keep asking yourself that question, and knowing it's a big thing when you kind of are able to say to yourself that I'm enough just as I am. That's like a huge
Yeah.
shift. It was for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I worked through that sort of same similar thing to yourself, to say like, no, I'm, and it's the other thing for me was, and then when I work with other people and people chat to on the podcast is the, and you said it earlier, it's the whole thing about judgment. One of you are moving away from judgment from others, and there's the fear of, because like being kind to the people is trying to see them as people and see them as,
Yeah.
something to be, someone to be kind to, removing that judgment of
Fellow
yourself of
human
them.
beings.
Hello human, exactly. But it's also like when you were able to move away from worrying about what other people think about you, that's another big shift as well.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
It's huge. Like we have to, and society is built like that, chasing, like you said, chasing,
Mm,
these things, and it's so easy, especially with social media, especially with all these people, and like Hollywood has always made it seem like you have to have all these things in order to be happy. And they're just things, and I really had to get into, mindfulness, um,
mm,
to which I found from, when I went to my ADHD coach, because I was curious, because I wanted to be a coach. Um,
mm,
and I wanted to see how that was different from my therapy. And,
mm,
the major difference that I saw was like that it's more of a motivation. It's more of
mm,
like I said, I need these people in my life to help me because with ADHD or life in general, it can be, those doubts can be so
mm,
overwhelming. They can kill any idea, no matter how great or how passionate you are about it. Like it's very hard for you to push through those doubts, initially, without somebody that's got your back, that can push you where, or see where, or look at you in ways that, like, you know they can see your strengths, so they can see where you're shining. And, like, um yeah, and that was difficult for me as well, is to, like, accept those compliments. And, that's where therapy
Yeah.
came in, and was like, because I don't believe that about myself. And, my therapist helped me a great deal with that, because compliments are like somebody giving you a gift. You don't have to
Yep.
necessarily agree with that gift, but if you don't take it, it's like throwing that gift in the trash, and you wonder why people aren't, recognizing or complimenting you, and that may be by design, and it was for me, because of the people that I had in my, well, yeah, telling me that, like, you're just gonna get a big ego, and you're gonna
Mm.
run around, your head's gonna get too big. That can be true, but if you understand, you have a dose of humility and
Yeah.
understand, and, like, you don't have to believe that, that person's proud of you or what they're saying. You just have to believe that they believe they see that in you.
Yeah.
So it
100%.
was like, wow, like, I don't even, if they are saying that, then, I can trust that they see that in me.
Yeah.
Which still, there's still a barrier that I have to get past with that,
Sure.
you know, um,
Yeah.
because there's still that depression, there's still that sadness, there's still that trauma that
Yeah.
I've yet to release,
Yeah.
through work. But I've gotten a lot
Yeah.
better than I was,
Yeah.
because I would just be like, dismissive, or I would do a back end, like, dismissal of that compliment, and make them feel bad for giving me a compliment, which is
Yeah.
a very unhealthy, toxic place to
Yeah.
be mentally.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, you used the absolute word that I would use myself. That compliments are a gift, and it's
Yeah,
and there's so much. I think there's so much society hang-ups. There's family hang-ups that we may have gone through as we were growing up, with schooling, whatever it is. There's all these things of, like, if you just say, I do a thing where it's like we either dismiss, deny, or decline the compliments.
yeah,
Right? Or we brush it off, or we don't accept it.
yeah,
But as the point you said there is like, you're doing such a disservice to the person that gave you the compliment.
yeah,
It's imagine if they actually gave you a physical gift, like a present or something, and you just took it off them and just threw it away. You imagine their
yeah,
face, like, it's the same thing that could be, they might be able to hide it a little bit better, but yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful thing for
yeah.
people
It affects that whole
to hear.
relationship.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. It's such a big piece of step to keep working through, when being able to accept when someone says something. And and then I think, and then it's also is encouraging when you see something in someone else, to really give them a genuine compliment as well. That's a
Yes,
powerful thing to position to be in. Is like, when you share something with someone, that when you say it, oh, like, you did, that what piece you did, or whatever piece of work, or it could be just something in a relationship, family, whatever it is. It's such a to do both sides of it is such a powerful thing, and to do it both genuinely and authentically is huge. Um, the one I want to
yeah,
move on
and
to
with
now,
the
because we could keep talking. Go ahead.
no, just real quick about, like, the one thing that I've did learn is it's called MBSP, and that's mindfulness-based strength practice. And one of the major things that they teach in that is to strength spot. And we all love
Mm,
compliments, especially genuine compliments coming from a
yes.
place that, like, of evidence. Like, I value this. I value your open mindedness, your critical thinking, and your appreciation, because it really helps make this whole conversation much better. It's about spotting those strengths that each one of us have, and
Yeah.
taking those compliments to the next level. And I believe that, if more workplaces just adopted that
Mm,
that that practice, like you would
Mm.
have so much more inclusivity and overall well-being in a workplace.
Yeah. Say it again for us there. Say the letters and the what it means again for us, Ron.
Yeah, it's MBSP, and that's something that I'm getting my certification for. Um,
Cool.
so it's mindfulness-based strengths practice.
Awesome.
It's like an
That
8 week
will it brings us,
course that teaches
of
you.
course. Brilliant. Well, you perfectly segued in
Yeah,
there because that's what I was going to ask you now anyway. Was like after all the way the work you've done on yourself and where you got to this moment, what's your sort of, because you said you wanted to learn more about ADHD, you want to you're part of the head of the committee in your workplace. What's the sort of what are you working on right now that's really important to you?
yeah. I'm definitely developing this coaching program, and it's about it's like I'm kind of workshopping some titles with it, but
Cool.
it's gonna be like a social shift. So it's like a 6 week
Yes.
program that teaches you the basics of how to develop a mindset of being more social, how like those things to be more pro social. So when I say pro social, it's not about oh you just talk to more people. It's about being able to talk to people, the right people,
Mm.
and go deep quicker. So it's anybody that you can meet, and you be able to talk. You talk about things like your passions, your struggles, what you're going through emotionally, life on a deeper level, and it's also a mixture of those. A little bit of the practices with MBSP in there, as well as some emotional exploration to kind of get you kickstarted into that mindset of like, I don't want to give you like, oh, this is what you say when you walk up to somebody, to a stranger. I want to give you some things, but I want you to come from more of a mindset of curiosity because we don't have
Mm.
that genuine curiosity as a culture. With that
Mm.
connection, like we need that human connection. We were designed to be, you know, like a social race because
Mm.
back then in prehistoric times or when mankind was first there, you had to be able to have good communication skills in order to stay in that tribe or be part of that tribe because if you were out of that tribe, the likelihood the percentages of you
Yeah.
surviving are going to go way down
Yeah.
because so it's really built within us to talk about these things and to be more socially intelligent, which social media doesn't really count because it's not
Mm.
that one-on-one connection. It's part of it, but it's a very small percentage of it.
Yeah. Now that sounds really interesting, very exciting. I love the premise of it, in a sense of what
Yeah,
you're trying to
thank you.
achieve with that, and what it will enable people to do. Because I even just love the term of again in the sense of the social. It's such an important word, or such a powerful word, empowering word, even because
Oh
it
yeah.
is an element of people are missing. There's something that sometimes people are missing. And is there a particular? Are you? I'm interested in that. Is it particularly aiming at men, or is it people? Particular? Is there a particular type of person you're aiming it at?
Yeah, and like back to your empower, like it is empowering because like I continue to
Mm.
practice it. And it gives me such a confidence to be able to stand up and to have conversations with anybody. I've had
Mm.
conversations with my pro, my plant manager and my production manager both at the same time talking about concerns that I had with the mental health of another individual that kept coming up to me saying that they were struggling, that he was in a position that this was a safety. This was something that was
Mm.
concerning on a safety, and coming from that lens of that mental, I'm the mental health committee leader. I feel like it's my obligation to stand up and say something. Um,
Mm.
so I was able to have that conversation, which I was nervous and scared to have, especially to people that are well above me in the hierarchy. But I'm also able to say, like, well, where I'm coming from, we're equals, or I may know more than
Mm.
you guys about this, and here's how this can help. So back to the coaching, I generally try to stick with guys 40 and above, who have either ADHD, depression, or have dealt with addiction. Um, you
Mm.
know, it's not that I just stick to that, but I feel like that's my wheelhouse because that's who I
Yeah.
am. That's as a
Yeah.
person, and I can
Yeah.
really connect. Like, experience for me trumps education any day of
Yeah.
the week. You always want to talk to somebody who's been in the trenches, so to speak.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
like if you come with
And
somebody who's like fresh out of school, you're like, I don't know. Like there's not as much of a connection there.
totally, absolutely agree. And also, I would very much suggest that that particular group very much needs
Oh yeah,
more people like
there's
yourself
plenty of them out
to
there
have.
for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's such a, it's, you think of that particular demographic in a sense of that age range of men who have a neurodivergence, ADHD or whatever, who have essentially still wearing that mask that you mentioned earlier, and who are probably
yeah,
just absolutely done. They're just sick of it. Like, do you know what I mean? They're
hmm
just, because I can imagine like the I'm just thinking of that person, of picturing that guy or whatever, and just the level of potential shame, burnout,
yeah,
worry, as you say, potential depression that they may be going through because they they would either think that it's not the quote unquote manly thing to do to talk about these things that we mentioned
hmm
earlier, or there's no one for me to go to. Do you know what I mean? That thing of like who's going to listen to
yeah,
a guy like me type thing. So
oh yeah.
I think it's absolutely um, fantastic that you're starting to put yourself into that position that you might be able to enable and help that group of people because they very
Yeah,
much need it.
thank you. And definitely, these people are considered burdens on society,
Yeah.
and honestly, like if you could flip that switch, which is not really that difficult. It
Mm.
takes work and it takes help, but it's like you can turn these individuals into from being a burden to contributing on such a level that they
Mm.
never thought was possible.
Yeah.
Imagine how much better the world can be if just a small percentage were to be flipped like that.
Yeah.
And that's my dream. That's my vision of, and I don't want it to just be me teaching this. I want to develop leaders, that
Mm.
stand up for what's right in the right way, to effect
Mm.
change, because that's the only way that change is really going to happen. It's got to come from above and below. It's got to come
Mm.
from, everyone, or most, or at least a few more people speak up about the same
Mm.
issues, then it's more likely those issues are going to change than if, we
Yeah.
all, it just becomes an isolated event,
Yeah. And it's
which it is.
I meant
That's
to
what it
say
is
this
right
earlier, and it
now.
just yeah. And this is what I meant to say earlier, and I think it's
Mhm.
really important to echo this in the sense that what you're trying to do with that group of people, or that anyone, you're obviously focusing on that, maybe that particular person, that the guy over 40 with ADHD, but anyone with a neurodivergent, whether it be ADHD or any sort of diagnosed neurodivergency, there has to be that move away from let's just prescribe a pill to
Oh
what
yeah.
are the other alternative, combinations of work therapies, whether it be coaching, whether it be therapy, whether it be changing work environments, whether it be flexibility in sense of time, hours, whether it's to do, I've seen to do things like it's lights, whether it's solo desking, whether there's so many more
Yeah.
things that can be done that
Yeah.
remove it. Or will just give you a pill and just jog on and get on with it.
No,
That's
and it
got to
will make
be
these
gone. Like,
yeah, and it will make these workplaces so much more like you want to show up to work because like, wow, this
yeah,
isn't like just freaking boxes and like we got to just
yeah,
fit in them or whatever. And yeah, like I agree. Like pills don't teach skills, but a lot of some certain cases, with the right therapist,
yeah,
like you do need that medication as a life
sure,
support, as like
sure,
as like until but the end goal should be that a more holistic approach. And to
yeah,
me, that MBSP, if you can, like, I want to be able to um adapt it to ADHD, an ADHD version of it, because I feel
mm,
like 8 weeks, the way they got it, is like it's very hard for somebody
mm.
with ADHD to go through that process. But I tell you, like it's incredibly life changing because, like, yeah, I still have negative thoughts. Yeah, I still get depressed, but I often say it's like before all this help and these tools that I had, it was like being on a life raft in the middle of a storm. Now that same storm is like I'm on a yacht, and I can still
Okay,
feel it. It's still there, but I'm like there's so much of a cushion between that emotion and how it affects me.
that's a great analogy. I really love that. That's puts it in a great perspective and picture.
Thank
That's
you.
really nice. It really is really cool. Like, yeah, because I can get, because it's also, it's the thing of, with any of this, and even with coaching, it's not, you said it earlier, it's not something to fix. It's not someone who's broken. It's just how
Yeah,
do you manage so you can have a more fulfilling life. It's not about removing anything or anything. It's just like, how can you, and that's, so to that description, instead of just being on a
yeah,
life raft, it's like, oh no, I'm still going through it, but I'm just able to just manage it better.
yeah. I don't have to worry that I'm gonna get thrown overboard or drown, or like, well, how
Yeah,
do I gotta act
yeah,
in this situation, or am I gonna even be able to
yeah,
cover it up this time, or
yeah,
should I
yeah,
just
yeah,
end it all? Because that
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yeah,
very real option for a lot of people. Because
sure, yeah,
suicide's not talked about enough.
sure,
And if it was just like there was an open door where they could feel comfortable about talking about it, yeah. And it's like
yeah,
there's even like a dream aspect that I've learned about it, where it's like if you have you continue to have reoccurring traumatic dreams, those
mm,
people are more likely to commit suicide. So it's like being
wow,
able to talk about these dreams and like having solutions to get through that, and just basically being open and about who because it's the silence that kills.
absolutely. It it's from, I mean, even just having this chat with you now, it very much, I get the feeling that you're kind of all in on this now. This is like, it's as much as this
Yeah.
part of you, you kind of like, well, actually, I'm going to, is there a part of you now going, well, I'm just going to embrace this. This is, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I don't see any way. I like anytime that I think of like giving up, or the doubts just start swirling. I'm just all I do is think about, well, do you want the life that you have? Like, do you want to continue to be in this job that you've
Hmm.
tried to get away from? Like, I'd rather do pretty much anything else. And but if I could, the idea of making it, like, I just don't see it failing. Um, I
Hmm.
feel I feel very confident in what I'm doing, and especially having conversations like this, it just there's always so much. The support when I have it is like incredible. I even wrote this blog about how the effects of blue light on your sleep, and um
Mm.
this lady emailed me about her daughter, and like how that blog and another article helped her to like to help her daughter, who was like a shadow of herself, and it's like those little things right there that are like
Yeah.
exactly why I do what I do, because it's like, who would have thought? Like, I just wrote that article to kind
Yes.
of like get my foot in the door and
Sure.
start the process. But it's
Yeah.
been amazing, like the comments. I've done
Yeah.
some on water, and um yeah, it's incredible, the feedback that I get from people that are even close to
Yeah.
me, like my mother and
Yeah.
her husband, are huge supporters. So
No, love it.
yeah.
No, and I think that's, when you can have, and I think that's when you get to that sort of next level when you can, and you have to go through the stuff yourself. And that's the thing as well. Like, there's a couple of things I'd say. You have to, it's
Yeah.
about working on yourself. You have to accept it's not easy. This shit's hard to work on
Yeah.
yourself. So don't think that, if you're listening or watching this, the amount of work that Ron's done on himself, that I've done on myself, that's not easy. And but you
Yeah.
have to accept that life can be brutal. Life can be beautiful, but life can be brutal. So it's not easy to work on. But when you start going through that, and then you start seeing that impact on other people, then you go, oh yeah, this is worth it. This is
Yeah.
worth, as you say, just that smallest of changes to a person, a perfect stranger in theory, that woman's child that you'll probably
Hmm.
never meet, but
Yeah.
the one piece of information that you shared with the world about one particular topic had an impact on someone. You go, yeah, shit, this is worth it.
Yeah. And that's why I continue to do the research, and I continue
Yeah,
to have an open mind, because you
I
just
love it.
don't
Yeah,
know how it'll affect you or somebody else. And when you have a positive influence on the world, it just makes the world a better place, because like that ripples out, rather than, and you can always tell in a where, it's like somebody with a bad attitude always, it just drags the people down, and,
yeah,
I still see those people as like, they're just crying for help. They're just dealing with trauma. They're dealing with some type of trauma, and they're still a
yeah.
person. So they still deserve, a level of respect. And I try my best to not like point out their failings, because that's only
Mm,
adding fuel to the
mm,
fire. Like, that's not fair
mm,
to them, because that used to be me. That used to be,
mm,
a version, like I used to be a version of that. So, I always look back on my own story, and,
mm.
and what I'm learning, and moving forward. I'm not always, 100% positive, and, like I
Mm.
get sad, and I'm not trying to, and I want to be authentic in who I am. So I'm not going to just, like, I need to be positive now. That's not healthy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling sad. It needs to come out. If I hold it in, I feel heavier. I feel more
Mm.
burdened. I'm not going to be able to show up in the future the way I would like to. And that's what I want to say is, like, when you do the work, you feel lighter, you feel more confident, you feel
Mm.
empowered. Not that those bad, life just happens. Life doesn't pick and
Yeah.
choose who it who it
Yeah.
bothers, or who it's tough on. It's just,
Yeah.
it's maybe a little bit tougher on neurodivergence, because the world's just not created with us in mind.
Yeah.
But we can create our own world
Yeah.
so much easier than any other people, with the right guidance. And
Yeah.
that's what I really want to
100%.
show and teach, is like,
Yeah.
and there's so many examples of famous people like Michael Jordan, um who have
Well,
ADHD, and they have like, it's like, I just say, like, you have such a big platform to show people that you're successful and have ADHD. So that whole like myth of you have ADHD, you're
Mm.
broken is just
Yeah,
gone with that, and you could just really help a lot of people just by saying that you have ADHD. And I'm hoping
yeah,
to get more people to be able to just come out and say, "Look, I have this, and it's not a problem."
100%. And I think it's, as you say, like from a different perspective in the sense of what in Ireland, and then probably what's going on in the UK as well. We see both, and as I say, there's so much more
Mm,
about it on various different TV programs and stuff, and
that's good.
trying to remove that stigma, trying to remove that label, and and really see it as it's just a different way of thinking. And if we are able to accept that different way of thinking and enable those people, whether it be young people, whether it be adults, enable them to do whatever they want to do, but just give them the tools, give them the space, give them the environments, then the sky's the
Yeah.
limit type thing. It genuinely is. And I think there's, I don't know if you come across this, but one of the things that's been very clear in sort of the evidence or the research that's come over out here is one thing about men with ADHD, the amount of women that were either
Mm,
missed or misdiagnosed in over the years, because it was considered it was almost only boys, young boys and men had ADHD, because
yeah.
the difference was so different in women. It was more a zoning out sort of symptoms as children, or a daydreaming type perspective, than a sort of running at that sort of stereotype of the running around. I think we almost need to remove those. There's going to be so many different sort of manifestations of what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So the more, and it's why it's like I really do appreciate you talking about it. The more it's talked about, the more it's normalized that we're talking about it, the more
Yeah.
it's just seen as it is what it is. Let's work with it. The better for everyone.
Everyone. This
Yeah.
isn't just about helping people with ADHD. It's about helping
No.
society
100%.
and the world as a whole, because like they can
Totally
be
agree.
we can be the answer to a lot of questions.
100%. Ron, I mean, and it has been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I just have
Yeah,
a
me
few
too.
questions that I like to ask every guest. You kind of gave us one earlier on, but I'll just see if we have any other ones in there. So, one of the first question I'd like to ask everyone: are there any quotes or phrases or things that you say that are important to yourself?
Yeah, I often say, if you can't be happy in the present moment, how do you think you can be happy in any other moment?
I love that. I love that. It's that whole thing of trying to when I have the car, job, house, status, I'll be happy. The sort
Yeah,
of the delaying it versus love that. I love haven't heard it phrased in that way. So I do.
thank
It's a
you.
really cool and I like that. Brilliant. Next one. Who do you think have been the biggest influences in your life?
I would say, Martin Luther King Jr. is definitely a huge influence. Especially since I found out he had depression. A lot of the fight that my advocacy comes from, his style, and I feel like mental health was, is such a deeper thing. Not to dismiss the fight that they continue to, but I feel like if we can
Mm,
relate on that level, um, you know, those other differences will start to disappear. Also, Thich Nhat Hanh has been a recent influence. I love his work, especially with mindfulness, and he was actually good friends with Martin Luther King. So it was
mm,
interesting. There's an
yeah.
added like to that, and I also
Yeah.
like James Baldwin as well. He's got such a way with words and
Love it.
perspective, especially from like both sides.
Yeah, they're very cool. No, love that. It's considering it's funny in the sense of this is well over, I think you might be into 110, 112 episodes. The first time that Martin Luther King has come up. So I'm
Interesting.
delighted that, yeah, there is interesting. And it's, yeah, absolutely. So no, I mean, he's yeah, such a
No, I've been
presence, like,
fascinated for him since I was young because
yeah.
he was like this book talked about how he taught these kids, these inner city gang kids in Chicago, nonviolence, and they actually like were catching bricks that were being thrown at them, risking their life for this nonviolence, and I was amazed at the influence that he was able to have on the youth
Mm.
of that
Mm.
caliber.
Yeah,
It's very striking.
absolutely. 100%. Um, Last question for you, Ron. What's important for your future?
My future is just continuing to develop um you know who I am in strength spotting, and continuing to push the boundaries of this pro social ability that I'm continuing to develop, and um helping other people is one of the biggest things that I want to be able to do. Seeing that transformation in some of my clients already has been one of the most gratifying things in my life.
Love it. Absolutely. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, Ron. I want to make sure people continue to find and support you in what you're trying to do. And we'll make sure any links are in the notes. But if you would like to give a shout out now where people can follow you and connect with you online.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I'm Ron Souers, affectionately known as your ADHD guy. You can find me on youradhdguy.com. I have a free discovery call. So if you're interested in learning how to be more pro social, or whatever direction that you think we can come up with on what would best help you, definitely feel free to do that. I also have my self discovery journal on that same website, youradhdguy.com. Has a bunch of prompts on how to dig deeper into that trauma, that emotion. Take your time with it. It's a great resource. And if you really like hearing my voice and what I like to say, you can always check out my podcast. Um, it's called "Don't Mind Me, I Just Have ADHD," and it's all on all the major platforms like Apple and Spotify.
Yeah. Awesome. That's it. I love that title as well. It's so cool. But so we will make sure all the links as well are in the show
Thank
notes
you.
for anyone watching or listening. So yeah, so make sure you check out that. And I think because this is such an important space, it needs people like Ron to be advocates. Yeah, and we
Thank
all
you.
need to learn and listen more. So yeah, make sure you check out those sites. Once
And we
again,
need
Ron, thank
people
you
like
so
you
much.
that give us the space to
Oh
talk
no,
about,
I
and the appreciation that goes so far. Your words of kindness, you know, are um, are very inspirational to me, and I'm sure to many other people.
Thank you so much, Ron. I do really appreciate that. And once again, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.